Welcome to this Mellow TV special. Today we are being joined by an outstanding woman who recently created history by being elected as the first female chairman of the 83-year-old People's National Party, PNP. She is also the Member of Parliament for St. Andrews South Western and is the opposition spokesperson for education and training. Today we welcome Dr. Angela Brown-Burke. Dr. Brown-Burke, welcome to Mellow TV. And firstly, let me congratulate you on this historical accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What does this accomplishment mean to you personally?
Well, the first thing is that, I just saw myself as being elected as chairman of the People's National Party at an important juncture in our history. And seeing myself contributing to what the party needed at this time to kind of move us forward. And then when I thought about being the first female chair, and just listening to persons as I was on the road, talking with them, I realized that is a big thing, and that there were so many other young women in the politics, in public life, who really saw this as a real hope, as a path that they could take, and that was really awesome.
Indeed, because that lends to the question, how important is it for you to be a role model to upcoming generations of young women who may aspire to also enter the political arena?
Well, I will say that I feel extremely honored and humbled to be in a position to really be that kind of a role model. It is particularly heartwarming for me because of my own background, knowing that, I grew up in downtown Kingston, went to Yallas to spend some time, so I'm really between country and town, a really kind of good blend and good mix. But that what it says is that regardless of who you are and your station in life, this is possible. And from that perspective, I really am pleased that I am able to do that. And what that also means is that it's an awesome responsibility at the same time, in terms of not just holding office, but making it count.
Can we pause for a moment? Ramon, can we remove the remote and the water?
Okay.
It's not showing? All right, great. I'm so sorry. Just look at them and they were like, ah. All right. And from that, a question. I'm very curious usually about our guests who accomplish great things. If it wasn't for the political arena, what other areas of interest might you have ventured into?
I've been thinking about that because, I'm just thinking what that would be. And I would have to say maybe teaching. I started teaching, as I like to say, at the age of 12, teaching Sunday school at All Saints Anglican Church downtown, right behind KPH. And I guess that sparked a kind of love for teaching and for just being in front of individuals, engaging them about learning and acquiring knowledge. And I have taught at so many different stages in my life. So I guess that probably would be my first choice. But it's always a toss-up between teaching and being a lawyer. But I guess teaching would win out.
I believe that you certainly utilize both in your current dispensation. So you ended up in the right position in education and training.
As it turned out, as they say, there is a higher power that's working and that makes everything come together and have it all aligned.
Dr. Brown-Burke, thank you for that. And now to explore some other issues. Unity in the PNP has been an ongoing issue. Having been elected chairman of the PNP, what actions do you believe need to be taken to steer the party in the right direction?
Well, there are a couple of things. And the first is to make sure that everybody is really convinced and sees that they all see happening, that this is their party, that is a party to which they all belong. And there's a space for them to hear their view, to have their views heard, to articulate their positions, a space where they are respected and where they can in fact contribute to the decisions that we are making. And then I think we also need to spend some time socializing with one another so that it is not just the cut and thrust of the politics in which we are involved, but we come to know each other, from a different space. So when we're kind of angry and the discussions get hot, we still remember that we are comrades at the end of the day.
Thank you. In fact, you recently gave an analogy of the PNP, quite famously by now, as a badly damaged car that is being worked on, with the leader gradually putting the pieces together. Sounds familiar? For a better mechanism. Well, we'd like an update, Dr. Brown-Burke. What state is the car in now? And are the windows winding up as yet?
You know, I am not surprised to get the question at all because I remember the statement. But I've taken enough licks for that analogy, so I like to say to persons, the long and short of that, we weren't in the best shape that we could have been. Where I see us right now is about to turn the corner in terms of the things that need to happen and what we have been doing. And I think that we are in a good position. There's a local government elections coming up, which give us an opportunity to work together and to show, manifest that unity that persons want to see and that we have been talking about.
Indeed. As such, party leader Mark Golding has implemented some initiatives within the party, such as the OT Fair Club Fund and the Unity Committee, in addition to holding ongoing meetings. Are these measures working, and is he leading the party in the right direction?
The first thing is that I do believe that Mr. Golding is leading the party in the right direction. You know, he is a down-to-earth individual who is sincere about bringing the party together and making sure that we focus on the purpose for which we were established, which is really defending the interests of the Jamaican people. I believe that it is working. You know, unity is not going to come overnight because it hasn't broken down overnight. And so it is going to take a lot of things coming together. I think the Unity Committee has been extremely good. They have assembled, as was reported at conference, a team of mediators and restorative justice practitioners who are going to be at the service of members in the party at different levels. I think giving that a chance to work is going to be important. I believe that we're going to have to also go back through some of the structures in terms of just making sure we create a space for those kinds of conversations that get individual to place on the table, what are those things preventing me from giving my all? What are those things that I still am annoyed about? And what are those things that I'm anxious to see? And I think that if we all can come together around that and answer those questions and work together in just kind of making sure that Jamaicans see us as an alternative government and see that this is not an act. We care about what's happening in Jamaica. We care about defending the interests of the Jamaican people. I think that we'll be in a good place.
Thank you. And as chairman, you will also play the role as a mediator in some instances, yes?
Oh, absolutely. Part of it is playing the role of mediator. Part of it is leading by example as well in terms of protecting that democratic space and making sure that everybody knows that they have a place and that we are listening and they are part of the process. And reaching out, you know, to those who, wherever there is a little hesitancy, to reach out and see how we can bring people together. That is really what the focus is as we have so much work to do.
What now is your message to persons who may choose to go to the public domain, such as recently the situation with Karen Cross about issues within the party?
The first thing I want to say to individuals who have issues is that if you are a member of the party, if you are a member at different levels, that the structures were meant to be able to do that. So I say two things. One is that use the structures that are available. I say to individuals who are responsible at the different levels for those structures, make sure that the space is provided. Make sure that persons have that space. And then I also say, as I have promised along the campaign trail, that shortly we will be establishing a drop box for individuals to also make their concerns known. And, you know, everybody knows my telephone number. It has not changed in the last 30 years. It has been the same number for the last 30 years. My email remains the same for persons to do that as well, so that we can respond to those issues before they become these really burning and explosive issues.
Thank you. And now we're going to your role as opposition spokesperson on education and training. You have been an advocate for the return to face-to-face classes in schools. What are your main reasons for advocating so strongly?
You know, it's really the experience of what I've seen, both in the constituency I represent and just going around talking to teachers, talking to parents, talking to students, and also just reading what has been happening in other jurisdictions and the reports that are out there about how badly we have been doing. And so what has been very clear is that online has not worked for the majority of our children. And because I was always conscious before of the inequities in the educational system, I realized that we really had to bring our children back face to face. Now, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be a place for online. I believe that education of the future is going to be blended or hybrid, as we say. But I honestly believe that to deal with reversing some of the inequities, getting our children to learn to read and write, getting our children to improve in terms of numeracy, and even just in terms of their socialization, how they talk to one another, how they play with one another, you know, how they deal with issues, that really was needed. And I really was convinced of that. The more I spoke to teachers who were telling me about what was happening and what the engagement looked like, I knew that it was an absolute necessity.
So recently, you definitely agreed with the return to face-to-face classes, calling it a common sense approach, and so you seem to be on the same page with the government now in terms of their decision to return.
No, I welcomed the decision that was made by the ministry. I thought it was, as I said then, a common sense approach. I remember when I first approached it, one of my own colleagues on the other side of the aisle in Parliament called me irresponsible. But sometimes you have to do the right thing, even if others think that you are irresponsible. Once it's grounded in science, in fact, in data, that is really what you have to use.
Thank you so much. The Ministry of Education has implemented some initiatives such as the NSLIP, the National School Learning and Intervention Plan, to guide curriculum management and to narrow the learning gap. What other initiatives would you like to see implemented within the education sector?
Really just some simple things. The first one is really a proper collaboration and consultation with our teachers. You know, I've been having this conversation going with the minister ever since I became a spokesperson on education and training about what consultation means. Consultation is not an information session where you come and just tell the teachers and principals what it is you're doing. You might listen to one or two complaints or problems and then that's it. No. You know, the thing about education is where we learn to work together. We talk about collaborative learning. Yes. And therefore the ministry has to epitomize that as well. And so what you want to see is the minister could bring an idea to the teachers, to the principals, and at the end of the day they agree on something totally different. I think the ministry has to be open to that because these are frontline workers. They have the experience. They have been experimenting. They have been modeling things that are working. And so get from them some of the things that are working, some of the things that they want to see, some of the things that they want to scale up, some of the things that they have been sharing so that we can have the best options being implemented in our schools.
Thank you so much. And we'd like to also jump to some suggestions on opposition spokesperson on education and training for students as they prepare to return to face-to-face classes.
Well, you know, the first thing I want to say to students is that I know that it has been a difficult time, especially with the pandemic. And I want to encourage you in all that you have been learning, because they have not been learning what should have been taught by the curriculum sometimes, but they have been learning some other things as well. They have been learning to work with one another. They have been learning to spend more time together. So many of them have come to this kind of spirituality of, you know, testing and questioning who they are and, you know, how they help one another. And I think that's good. As you come, observe the protocols. Make sure you wear your mask, make sure you're washing your hands, and make sure that you're looking out for one another and take this seriously. You have an opportunity to be so much more simply by what you do. And that's really what I want to encourage them to do.
Thank you. Dr. Brown-Burke, what is your take on the Ministry of Education's announcement that 2 additional years will be added to high school education with the Sixth Form Pathways program?
The first thing to say is that back in, was it March, I think it was, when I spoke in the sectoral debate, I did say that as a party, as an opposition, we thought that post-secondary education was important. And so if it is that we were putting sixth form as a real transition to post-secondary, tertiary, and so on, it will be one thing. How it has been designed, I don't believe it makes sense. It doesn't make sense because I don't see in that the improvement that is required from kindergarten through 11 to make sure that individuals, when they finish grade 11, come out with the requisite skills and competencies that we should have. What I see being done is still based on a premise that there are going to be X number of persons coming out with less than 3 subjects. And that, I believe, is not what we should be accepting. The other thing is that it doesn't really seem as if it is well thought out. It hasn't been well thought out because many of our teachers don't even have the resources to deal with the students that they now have, much less to find the space, teachers, and resources for a number of other students to put in grade 12 and 13. Also, this notion of it being mandatory is not correct. It can't be right because right now as we speak, there are students who leave grade 11, go into teachers' colleges, go to UTech, go to JAGAS or other institutions like that to continue their learning. Why then should we interrupt that and force them into a particular stream that the ministry has devised? I don't think that that makes any sense whatsoever.
Well, from that, Dr. Brown-Burke, what is your vision for the recovery of the education sector, keeping your response in mind, and also especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic? Because certainly the pandemic has posed challenges such as learning loss, which would be, I believe, what the government is trying to address.
So, you know, the government has come with a mandatory program, which is not really aimed at addressing that. So there are a couple of things. One, we would remember the students who didn't take CSEC or who thought that they would not have done well and they needed some kind of additional support this year. We haven't heard about those. I'm not sure if those are going to be part of the pathway 3 or whatever. That's one thing. So we have that. And then the more fundamental issue, which is really about literacy and numeracy in our schools, and really just making sure that when our students get, or our infants get to kindergarten, that, you know, the resources are there, so that when they now leave kindergarten and enter primary, they are ready for grade 1. That coming through the system, when it's time to get to high school, that they are ready. They have the fundamentals right. Starting assessment earlier and doing the intervention, doing the individualized learning plan to be able to get there. So that again, when they get to grade 11 and they are ready there, they would have, as I said, the necessary competencies. They would have been exposed to vocational skills. And so we don't keep this notion that you can only do vocational skills if you're in pathway 3. If you don't have enough subjects, if you don't have this, if you don't have that. No, it should be something that it should be an option that is open to all of our students and to those who are so minded and who have that skill or have that interest.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. And now we go to the upcoming local government elections. They are on the horizon. What is the mood in Camp PNP ahead of the local government elections?
When we went to conference, we did announce that the middle of November we would bring all our candidates together. I think we are satisfied with where we are in terms of our candidates. Of course, every time we come before an election, sometimes you have to make sure that people remember, listen, we are not in charge, we are not going to set the date, so what we have to do is plan and prepare. And so that's kind of what we're doing, you know. We are going through the steps with our candidates and with their team to make sure that they are doing the right thing, that they are equipped to do the right thing, and that they are engaging the voters, engaging persons on the ground. Because at the end of the day, they are going to represent the people on the ground. And you can't talk on behalf of persons or represent them unless you have been talking with them and unless you know what their concerns are and the things that they would like to see you do.
And so I do believe that Mark Golding and Team PNP are planning to go to the different constituencies and spread the message of the PNP ahead of the local government elections.
Well, we are going to be meeting shortly, bringing all of our candidates together to kind of, give them a little charge and set them on the road to making sure that they are clear on what is required. This period requires a set of representatives who really are grounded in the work that is taking place in community and the issues in communities. It has to be grounded in terms of what the people are requiring, what they need at this time. We have looked at poverty and what is happening with the pandemic. We have looked on the increase in mental illness amongst so many. We have seen even in the school system an almost total lack of any attention being paid to our students with disabilities, for example. We don't talk about that a lot, but they too are totally left behind. We want to make sure that our representatives are on the ground and looking out for that and talking on their behalf and saying what needs to happen there.
Certainly, and the pandemic does present some special challenges during this period. What would then be your suggestions with regards to dealing with the disabled students?
Well, the first thing is to understand that there are so many things that they require that really are needed face to face. Making sure that our schools, as we open and go back to schools, for example, that they are also making the accommodations for all of our students, whether it is for those who are physically disabled, whether it is for those who are vision impaired, whether it is for those who require some kind of caregiver with them, and making sure that we are doing that, making sure that the kind of interaction that they require, that is there, and making sure too that our other students, especially for those who are in schools where they are all together, making sure that our students are taking care of each other and understand that all of them have a responsibility to look out for each other and to make sure that they're making the best use of the education system that's there and the resources that they are provided with.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown-Burke, for that. Going into the local government elections once again, what can persons expect from the PNP under the leadership of Mark Golding going forward?
Well, the first thing that persons have to remember is that the People's National Party has always been for local government, and we have always understood the importance of ensuring that at the local level that you have that access to your representatives, that they are visible, that they are in touch, and that they are making representation on your behalf. We really believe that the councils themselves need to be better resourced and should not be managed from the center. And that is the reason why we want to make sure that we elect competent individuals as councillors and therefore as mayors, so that the work that is required on the ground through the municipalities and that kind of thing is taking place and is being taken care of at that level.
And as you plan to go into the constituencies leading up to the local government election, certainly COVID-19 and transmission must be an issue there as well. Are there any plans in place to mitigate the spread of the virus as you campaign?
COVID-19 has just made so many things, so many areas of life different, and campaigning is one of those. It is one of those because we have to be concerned about our seniors and making sure that we are not putting them at greater risk. We also have to be concerned that we are masking up, encouraging people to mask up, encouraging those that don't have any impediment or any need for exemption to also be vaccinated. Because we do believe, like others, that the science has shown, that the best defense against COVID-19 is really the vaccine. So we encourage that. And then we encourage the mask wearing, the physical distancing, and making sure that we are doing the hygiene protocols about how you sneeze, how you wash hands, how you greet each other, all of those kinds of things. But we have to find ways of living with it and through it, as we are doing now. And so part of it is that we can't stay home. And some things just can't be done online, It is not every conversation that you can do via Zoom. Sometimes you want to actually see the person so that you can really get that kind of interaction that gets you to understand exactly how people feel and how they are experiencing it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown-Burke. What is your message as opposition spokesperson on education and training as we celebrate National Youth Month?
Listen, my message is really one of lifting up our youths and encouraging our youths to be part of the conversation about the present that they are living and the future that we are creating together. And I believe that what we really have to do is really make sure that whatever we do, we bring them in that space and be confident in who you are as a youth in Jamaica with a bright future and one that is seen as a partner in development.
Our parting question. We're going to be utilizing your role as chairperson of the PNP now in making some suggestions with regards to the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic overall.
You know, I mean, that's a good one. Thank you so much for that question. Just even coming here today, my office sent to say to me, you know, the office is really filled with people, overflowing with people who are coming to take their second vaccines because they know that this is around the time for the second one, and we have done some blitz in the communities. So one of the things I want to say is this. We did some blitz for persons to do their first vaccine. It is unfair to ask them to come to some central locations that's further away from their communities to come in for the second vaccine. Let's make it easy for them. Let's come back into those communities for the second vaccine. Let's also prepare the kind of material that will break down some of the hesitancy that we have been seeing. We know how to do it. We were the ones who did two is better than too many, you know, as a family planning campaign that was extremely successful. You do remember that. We were the ones who went to our sex workers to talk to them about screening for HIV and STDs and so on. And I mean, we have been successful in these things, so we know how to do it. Let's get out there to get our people onto that path where they can reject the misinformation and disinformation with which they have been bombarded, and that they can become a lot more welcoming in terms of taking it. And for those who have come out, those who require their second vaccine, let's make the effort to take it to them. Why should we be throwing away vaccines when there are still 77,000 people waiting for a second dose? It's because we're not meeting them where they are, and we need to do that.
Thank you for that. You certainly would feel good to know about the fact that we are approaching that 65% requirement for both citizens of the country and also within the education sector that has been a target that has been set by the government. What's your take on that?
You know, I keep saying that right now we have very few vaccines for students 12 and below, right? I think I heard Pfizer coming out with something. Yes, but I also believe that we need to be guided by the science. And so I asked the Minister of Education the other day in Parliament to give us the data. We have heard that 90% of the persons who are seriously ill and in the hospital, and of those who are dying, maybe more of those who are dying, are 60 and over with one or two comorbidities, right? Meaning they have other diseases. For those children who are getting seriously ill or who are dying, what's the percentage? I think that we need to know. The Minister of Health couldn't say. The Minister of Education didn't know. And I think that these are some of the questions we want to ask because we want to understand the risk to our children and therefore how we should treat them. Yes? Because if the risk is really negligible, then let's do the things that some other jurisdictions are doing. For those under 12, we bring them come to school face to face. We do the mask wearing. We do the sanitization. We make sure they're physically distanced. We make sure that the air, some kind of purification or proper ventilation within our classrooms. And those are the things that other jurisdictions are managing to make sure that their children are safe. That's one. For those, the 65%, I mean, I don't know if the ministry, having made all the boo-boos they did with Pfizer, should really be telling students to stay home because you don't reach 65% of the student population.
That is a target that has been set for.
No, it's a target that has been set that the ministry has acted in a way to undermine. And therefore, the question I'm asking, what is the responsibility, what is the accountability on their part? Because I really, really believe that school really should be about education. Yes?
Right, and these questions, interestingly, now is the time to raise these questions as we make the decision to return the students. These
Absolutely.
are questions that need to be answered before we return students to face-to-face classes. So
it is, and the other question that, or some of the other questions to be asked and answered are also these. Those students who don't have a device, who don't have stable connectivity, who don't have the kind of support system at home to allow them to really benefit from online learning, or from the packages that you're sending where you don't have an opportunity to even speak to them and explain the concepts for them to go and do the practice. How do we get them to learn?
certainly,
how do we get them to teach them?
And at this point, we should say a big thank you to the private sector. They have been making a lot of contributions.
They have been.
Various persons have been going above and beyond to make sure that Jamaican children do have a device so that they can do their online learning.
You know, education in Jamaica has always benefited from philanthropy. We have always had, whether it is a church, whether it is business, corporate Jamaica, whether it is individuals and so on, who have always come on board to help with education. And I want to thank those who have helped, some of them doing with the Wi-Fi, some of them with the tablets. We still need a lot more in terms of the devices, both for teachers and for students. And that is one of the areas where we have seen a lot of process. A lot more is needed. So all of you out there who can help, come on board and join the others and do that. But that's one aspect of what needs to happen for education. We still need to deal with the rest.
Dr. Brown-Burke, thank you so much for joining us on this interesting and stimulating conversation, this Mellow TV special.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope I have shared as you would have hoped, and added some insight into some of the questions that you have asked.
As the Member of Parliament for the St. Andrews Southwestern constituency, what is your message to your residents there?
I just want to give a big shout out to residents in St. Andrews Southwest, West St. Andrews as we call it, for giving me an opportunity to serve them, and for actually understanding sometimes when I have been away with some other things. I want to say to you that we have a lot of things that we are doing. Our education program, our second chance program, those hard programs, you know, working with our mothers there and our women there, working with the crime and violence for individuals who just want to see that the community is a safer space and a safer place. I continue to pledge to you my fulsome activities and support and engagement in dealing with these issues. And I just want to give a big shout out to all of you who continue to really and truly lift me up and allow me to do these things. Blessings.
All 12,000.
All 12,000 of them. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown-Burke, for joining us. It's been a stimulating and interesting, as well as an insightful conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.